Paddy, you also mentioned that Long Kesh. 50 years on from the burning of Long Kesh, on the day we sit down to record this, um, you were a member of the Provos. You were in the cages that day.
Yeah.
Um, can you just tell us the build up to that day, and the aftermath?
Um, the that summer we had the Ulster workers strike when they sort of paralysed the north. It could nearly, they brought down the power sharing executive, the original power sharing executive, but the, and if you think about it, it could have been a brilliant worker strike if they weren't bloody fascists and the way they closed down the power stations and everything, But obviously it was for a different reason. But that was going on all summer, and we were worried that because they'd more or less taken over the whole place. The cops had sat back, and the Brits had sat back and let them more or less. They were civil servants were getting passes from them to go into their work. It was nonsense letting the UDA control the streets. But anyway, we were worried that they might attack the Kesh. So we had built up a stockpile of battens and all sorts of stuff, and would set up. There'd be half a dozen guys every night, different guys, set up the whole night watching in case we were worried because there was about maybe 500 loyalists within the cages as well. So it would be a sort of a Trojan horse if they had attacked the jail. They'd have been armed with weapons, and they could have been like Sabra and Shatila and in the Lebanon in the late 70s when the right wing phalangists in Lebanon wiped them out along with Israelis. So we were worried about that, but we'd all built up all this sort of weaponry, I suppose, and we didn't need to use it, and everything went sort of back to, you couldn't say normal in a place like that, but there was always protests, and with a protest then we didn't take visits for a few months. We didn't refuse prison food and sort of ostracized the screws, the warders, and wouldn't let them into the cages, and our parents sent us in food parcels that we were lived in them. And then a few times then, every so often, they would raid the cage and they were sending the Brits and they would give out a bit of a beating. So this went on a couple of times. So our leadership warned the governor, if you send in the Brits again, we're going to burn the place to the ground. And this was about September. And on the 14th, 15th October, the word came up. We had guys, each cage would have two guys. Semaphore, it's a sort of thing, I think, from the war. You sent messages with you crossed these flags. It was a sort of a Second World War thing, I think, maybe longer. So we had guys trained to use these so they could send a message. There was obviously no internet or no iPhones. So, and the camp was maybe the size of, uh, I don't know, maybe the size of a small town, like size of Tuam, or a massive camp from one end to the other. And the so they sent the message up. The Brits had come into Cage 13, and the riot started there. And they sent the message up, and the guy Davy Morley's dead now, was in charge of Republican prisoners. He said to send the message back to every cage to burn the camp. And about 8 o'clock that evening, we lined up in the yard. We gave the screws a free passage. Not one warder was touched. We took over their huts at the end at the entrance to the cage and got all files and everything they had there. But we gave them a free passage down to the centre of the camp, and we were lined up, and two guys went into each hut armed with a box of matches. We actually, I'll go on to, we actually were given a box of matches on Saturday night, as a memory of, and they set the cages on fire. There were wooden huts, and we marched out, and we all marched. It was 22 cages, and we all marched from different angles onto the big football pitch in the centre of the camp, and the place went up in smoke. It was a glorious sight, if I may say, and the only cages that weren't burnt were the loyalists in 14 and 19. and we'd talked to them, and they were actually supporting us in the protests over things. And I remember no camera. Well, we had a camera, but never got a photo of it. They had a flag with a green hand and a red hand joined together, saying "United we stand, divided we fall." But the UVF UDA leadership sent them. They told us this. Sent them in word that people on the streets in the Shankill and East Belfast were annoyed that they were coming too close to us within the Kesh. So they says they would support us, but they wouldn't burn their cages. And the official IRA, they had one cage, who came known as the Stickies, who the Provost broke from. They didn't. But the Loyalists, the next day, burnt. We were there all night. Thousands of us. We got with a radio smuggled in. We heard in the 7 o'clock news, everything's under control. In Long Kesh, there was a small bit of trouble, but everything's under control, and the warders are in complete control. We had control of the whole camp. They were out at the perimeter, and I always think the warder in Long Kesh, Truesdale, he was a bit like the warder. I forget his name now. In the film Andy Dufresne's Shawshank Redemption. The warder, remember, he came in and see where is he gone, and he pulled the poster off the wall, and there was a big hole, and your man had escaped from this, so the warder had no control. So the warder in Long Kesh had no control. So the Brits had made a decision. We found out later, but they were afraid to go in during the night. Definitely, people would have been killed on all sides. So we were still all over the place. And about 10 o'clock, the next thing, a big gate flew open, and they came driving in their armoured cars. Hundreds of soldiers running towards us, firing gas, plastic bullets. But, which was quite ironic, the wind blew the gas back towards the soldiers, and a lot of them didn't have masks. They hadn't enough masks, so they had to pull back. They were getting the gas at first rather than us. But then when they reorganized, but we were inside the cages that had been burnt, so there's 12-foot wire all around them. So that was a natural barrier between us and the soldiers. So they were firing gas, firing plastic bullets in through it. We were throwing whatever we could get our hands on. And that went on. And I remember looking at my watch. It was about 4 o'clock. And I thought to myself, this is going on for 6 hours. Now, there was nearly 2,000 of us. And they were afraid. They were afraid to move, and they held back. But eventually, maybe it was a mistake on our half. They divided ourselves between the two. There was two big football pitches. And the Brits then took their chance, made a pincer movement, drove in, smashed down the fences with the armoured cars. And we got back up to the top end of the camp where our cages were. And they caught about 300 of the guys. And they just, the boys told me it was like being in a horror movie, like a apocalypse now. All they could see was the Brits walking in, firing gas, plastic bullets, and the boys were lying on top of each other, and they got massive beatings. We had made it up, the majority of us, like up to the top end of the camp, where the loyalists were gathered. And sorry, any of our boys got hurt. Like a couple of them lost. One, Hughie Dorney's dead, and I lost an eye, plastic bullet straight in the face. Eddie Carmichael badly beaten, and the loyalists carried them into their cages and gave them treatment and helped us. And fair play to him. I was talking to him. I got to know Plum Smith. He became a UVF leader when he got out, but he was a good wee guy. He was actually shop steward in Harlem Wolfe and he was chairman of the Northern Ireland Soccer, the international team supporters club. He was a football man. And I used to chat to him because he was very socialist orientated, and there's a bit of that in loyalist as well, always has been. But they helped us out during the day, but then Gusty Spence, the famous loyalist leader who's also gone, he came to our top guy, and he said, it's futile. Somebody's going to be killed. He said, he's a major point. It's got world news, like they had the radios and TVs. And he says, we could negotiate. I'll go down and negotiate with them. They'll let you just go back to your cages. And that's what we did, But this was nearly 7 o'clock in the evening. And we went in to each cage that was there. But of course, the Brits came in then and did a bit of battering. We were up like spread eagle against the wall, the cage. Everybody got a few slaps with a baton and whatnot. But we hadn't eaten anything for 24 hours. Generously, I suppose, they came round with tea and toast, I think I remember. But I remember talking to a young soldier, and he was from Boat Bridge or somewhere, Scottish regiment. And he says, I don't understand, guys. He says, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Celtic supporter. And I says, listen, it's nothing to do with religion. It's that bloody uniform you're wearing, And the wee guy hadn't a clue, Another friend, John Noonan from Dublin, he was broken-hearted when he seen the Brits circling the cage. Didn't he see a guy from Dublin in the British Army uniform, one of his mates? When John came north in the mid-70s, this guy had went over to London and he ended up joining the British Army. And he was out surrounding the cage, and John was he couldn't believe it, But that was it. The leftists to our own devices. There was nothing there. The 3-4 huts were burnt down. The washroom burnt down. And there was rubble and sticks and planks of wood and blocks. And the loyalists said there's word they're going to take us to England or put us back on the prison ship Maidstone in Belfast Lough or different ideas. But the next day they came and they told us, "You've made their mess, you've live in it." And for the next 6 weeks, we had to build these wee shacks of huts, a few bits of blocks, a wee bit of corrugated iron. And we lived in these wee huts for the next 6 weeks while they were working away at the lower cages to rebuild them. And I remember the first morning waking up, and I set my boots outside and of course it was raining, the boots full of water, and we made do. We nearly had a barbecue in a sense, a big bit of mesh, and we let the wood and cooked a wee bit on it. And one of the cages, cage 7, I think, the boys had a tunnel started, and they kept going at the tunnel, and it was sort of camouflaged then with all the rubble. And 30 of them got out, but unluckily a Brit patrol was just happened to be coming at that time, and Hugh Coney was shot dead, and the rest of the guys were captured, But all sorts of stuff were going on for the next. Paisley came in. We wouldn't let, I suppose, the SDLP were our political enemies. There wasn't much. The Shinners weren't very strong them days, but so Jerry Fitt and Paddy Devlin and John Hume wanted to come in, but we refused to let them come into our cages. But Gusty Spence, the loyalist, shouted over to Geordie O'Hara, we'll say, Ian Paisley would like to go in to visit Jews as well, if it's okay. And Geordie says, no problem. The next thing, Paisley landed in our cage, a big handshake. And I'm Ian Paisley, and Geordie, I'm Geordie O'Hara, OC, IRA prisoners. So much for not talking to Republicans. And Paisley, apparently the loyalist told him, went on TV that night and says it was like Calcutta, it was terrible. He says that, the conditions, he spoke up and said it was terrible for people to have to live that. But that was it. It was 24 hours of mayhem. Nobody was killed. We were under strict instructions not to go near the perimeter. Now, the guts of 2000, 38 guys walked out in 83 out the front door, more or less. The watchtowers, there would be a Brit in each watch, these 30-foot watchtowers. So there's a bit like Stalag, you see World War II movies. So they would be up with a rifle. We were under strict orders. Nobody was going near the perimeter. They didn't want anybody killed. It's very possible, if, as they did in 83, they took the uniforms off the warders. Probably you could have got out, although they were sending thousands of troops across Belfast, and I suppose they were possession. But anyway, nobody was killed. And that was it, over Christmas, New Year, to move us down. But what they started doing then was they built 30-foot walls right through the camp, so it could never, like, because we had taken over the place for 24 hours. And they built these big 30-foot walls right round the camp and through the camp. And then the next thing, of course, we've seen buildings at the lower end with the internee. It ended internment, and all the internees had got out in '75. But with the internee cages were tumbled, we've seen these buildings coming up, an obscure looking building and a H shape, which we didn't know what it was. And of course, that became the H blocks. And they spent the whole year, there was an Irish ceasefire in '75, and they spent the whole year negotiating with the British government. And they tried to bring in the H blocks without any trouble. And I mean, the ROCs went down and inspected them and came back and said they're brand new, much an improvement. But the reality was they were going to announce they were taking away political status, and anybody arrested after the 1st of March '76 would be going to the H blocks. So, and they actually had ROC, Davy Marley let him out to meet the Army Council, and they even gave him a weapon. They just pushed their luck with him and said he needed a weapon to protect himself, and the police gave him a weapon. He went to Dublin, met the Army Council, and they said there'll be no, well, we sent out word there's no way we would wear a prison uniform or accept that we weren't political prisoners, and that was the word they sent back to the government. So came 1st of March, Pierre Nugent was the first guy, he's dead now as well. He went in and they said strip off, put on the prison uniform, and he refused, battered him and threw him in a cell with a blanket, the famous blanket then. And then as they started coming in on their hundreds and hundreds, started the blanket protest, then the dirty protest with excretion on the wall, which eventually ended up in the hunger strikes, So it all, the hunger strike was the end product of what started there in March '76,
Paddy, you went on Saturday night. You had a get together.
Yeah,
You did 50 years on.
Yeah, it was 50 years today. Actually, today is the exact date. But they had there's a group been organising over the last at least 10 years and maybe longer. And I hadn't actually been up at one of them, but there's a few guys. There's one guy, Jim McCann, and he's actually lost a leg in recent years. His health not great, but he's been pushing because they admitted to say during the riot that day after the burning, before they came in to soften us up, they flew in the helicopters up and down the pitch, dropping canisters shaped like a rugby ball. When they hit the ground, they burst open, and there'd be 100 canisters of this CR gas, which was suffocating. It wasn't like the gas on the streets, and they were up and down and dropping the gas on us. At the moment, there's 250 of the guys who were on the pitch that day have died of various cancers. So now I know we're all getting on, and maybe life has took its toll, but they've all died of younger, like a lot younger, various cancers. There's been a campaign going to try and get the Brits to admit this, but the Brits are never going to admit that, But they have top solicitors on the job at the moment, and they're thinking they're getting near. They're getting near a conclusion, But anyway, they had the 50th on Saturday night. It was in the Felons Club. I don't know if you've ever been in it.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
You have been in it, yeah. So it's the main Republican club, possibly in Ireland. It started off in the guys in the 50s started it off after they got out, and they were a very low ebb, and they had a wee hut down beside Milltown Cemetery. And then in the 70s, they moved to where the Fennels is now. It was a youth club. We actually used to play football in it. An old Presbyterian hall, I think, originally. And then it's really, I mean, now it's a beautiful building now. It's a unique sort of place. It's open to the public. Like anybody come in, and the boys were telling us, like when the Gaelic the hurling teams are up from Tipperary and all the different teams. They all make a beeline. They've been told about that they all land in the Felons. But to be a member, it's an eclectic membership. You can only be a member if you were in prison before in Long Kesh, or the older guys in Crumlin Road or whatever, So to be a member, but that's the only. It's open, It's run like a bar club anywhere, and so they had the function, showed a few videos, a few interviews with people, and they're raising money. They were having a big raffle ballots and stuff to build. I think it's a statue to Bobby Sands, but it's incorporating the burning, and so he was there in the burning as well. But the raising, and like they got a check from 10,000 from New York from a group, things like that, and then they had Spirit of Freedom. I don't know if you've seen them, coincidentally, Tony was the lead singer in the group, and Tony Kelly escaped in the big escape in '83, So no better man to be lead singer in the group. And there's actually a guy I know, he's left him. I was asking Tony the last night, Limerick Pat, we called him, from Limerick, obviously married to Donegal, but he played with him for years as well. But he said he's with another band now, Ern Gobra or something, is it? Or another group anyway. It was a lovely night. I met guys I hadn't seen in 50 years. It was nice to meet up with some of the guys. A guy, Johnny Johnson, lived in Athboy. He died recently. We were up at his funeral, and his wife asked me to say a few words, and his wife was up along with his son, and one of the boys suggested, and about 6 or 7, Johnny had been in our cage. We all went over and hugged the wife and said a few words to her, and we got a photo taken. It was quite nice, But lots of the guys, like every couple of months, I get a message and somebody's died, and I know we're all, I suppose, getting to that stage in life when, it's unfortunate, but it's, it's getting closer all the time. But it was a great night. Oh, it was a lovely night. It was hard to believe it was 50 years, but it's nice that it was remembered,
Paddy, you were also busy on Sunday night. You spoke about meeting up with your old comrades on Saturday night for the 50th anniversary of the burning of the cages. But the Wolfe Tones were celebrating 60 years on the road. Another milestone, and they've finally retired, unless they said they get a gig in Crow Park.
Yeah.
How was Sunday night? My son went Friday night.
Yeah. Mary's niece and man were there Friday night. In fact, I was reading in the Endo. They were talking to one of the stayed in the Gibson. Actually, Mary's niece and Owen met them in the Gibson. I think it's Bono's hotel. I'm not sure. But the article in the Endo, the guy who was interviewing him, he says that he had a wee bit of a hangover, one of the Warfields. He says that they didn't get to bed at 5 a.m. after the first gig Friday night, and people were sending whiskey. So every minute there was whiskey coming to the table. So he said he was a wee bit, he wasn't feeling just 100% on Saturday afternoon. We headed down on the 2 o'clock train. First train. They've built a spanking brand new train station in Belfast, Grand Central, and it's and that was the first. Was going up. We had to get the bus from Newry to Belfast, so Sunday was the first where the trains were sort of operating normally. And we landed down, and we just got the Lewis down to the point, and we went in to have a look at this Gibson, isn't it? I think that's the call it. We went into the place, but we were going to get somebody to eat, but of course, we're saying it was Bono prices. So we decided we'd come down, the area in the Glass House, at the pub there, the Glass
Yeah,
House.
yeah.
So we went into the Glass House. There was two young guys playing a bit of music. We were there. Met a couple about our age over from Birmingham. Irish roots. Said they'd seen them 40 years ago in Birmingham, and they wanted to come over. And it was people like that. I mean, there was 15,000 there each night. And the crowd was mixed, like from the young kids, up to our age and older, and so we went down about 7. A few beers on Saturday night. Didn't actually feel it. 1 pint before it, and actually didn't bother. We just sat and enjoyed the concert. It was. I hadn't seen them myself for 20 years. Seen them in City West one time on New Year's Eve, and the it was the Wolfe Tones. I mean, they're a brilliant. They're the best. They and no matter how many bands have imitated them over the years, like there's just no. The closest I ever seen was the Barleycorn, who brought out the song "The Men Behind the Wire" in '71, and we used to have them.
That band, McCormick.
Eh? Eh?
McCormick, a draw the man sang with that.
Yeah, McCormick and Liam, some of the curly black from Andytown. But I mean, we had them in Donegal around the time of the hunger strike at functions, fundraisers, and I mean they brought the house down, and so they I think rivaled them for a while at that time, but then they broke up. But it was brilliant, and the atmosphere was. I mean, it was like, how could you compare it? It was like when at Parkhead or Champions League night. I mean, there was flags, there was Celtic jerseys, there was GA jerseys, and on the front part there was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 standing. That's how they brought it up to 15,000. I think it's normally 10. We were at Andrew Rue this time last year, a bit of a difference now, Andrew Rue, and I think it was 10,000 that night and it was packed. So, but it went on to our bus was 11:15. There's no late trains, and but they went on to nearly 11:30, and we got Lewis up the Abbey Street, got over, missed the bus. But the show was great. I mean, there's always a bit of a discussion amongst Republicans about the Wolfe Tones. I mean, obviously they've made millions. Some people feel they made it on our backs, and they didn't really contribute much. But I take a slightly different view. I think it was better some groups sang the songs than not sing them, and all down through their history. The Irish government, once the trouble started, the Irish government did not want young people singing them songs. RTE never brought the Wolfe Tones on. The Late Late Show never brought them on. Joe Duffy, the prick, last year, I think, caused the Wolfe Tones to become the most popular. They've been sold out since the day they had the row with Joe Duffy last year on his radio show. I mean, they didn't want people singing. It was okay singing in the 60s and singing Come Out You Black and Tans and all that, because it was 50 years ago in Cork. But when it was happening in Belfast in reality in the 70s, the Irish government didn't want it. They didn't want young people. And I mean, it was fantastic last night to see the young people, and they knew the words of every song, and they were, they were enjoying it, and they were proud of it, and seeing some been interviewed in TV and stuff, and they've said we're Irish, and yeah, that's our culture, and that's our music and our history, and the Wolfe Tones, like Christy Moore, the Wolfe Tones are telling a story, and it's. And yeah, it was great, I mean, they sort of finished off and they said, that was more or less it. They were a bit emotional. The big guy, what do you call the tall guy, when he sang Grace and he got a standing ovation, and he was actually rubbing a tear away. And they said they might come back for one show next year in Croke Park, which got a massive cheer. it'd be fantastic. 82,000. I'm not sure will the GAA sanction it. You know, whatever about Gareth Brooks, or whoever Oasis. Maybe the politics of it mightn't sit lightly with the guy, even though they're, we know the whole history of the guy, but whether they'll, you know,
This might be
whether they'll, we'll see. It'll be brilliant. I mean, imagine 82,000. It'd be just incredible, you know.
yeah.
Um,
The first time I seen them, Paddy, was in the El Molino in Julianstown in the Marquee on the
right.
that hotel is long gone now.
Yeah.
It used to flood, and I think the last time I saw them in the Olympia, but maybe 2 years ago. And I was at Electric Picnic, I must have been the only person that wasn't at the Wolfe Tones picnic.
But your Electric Picnic, I mean, it was incredible. Seen the organizer, you'd probably know him, the organizer, the main guy, I
I
think.
don't know him, no, but
Oh, yeah, I seen him been interviewed. And he said last year when they put them on the smaller stage, and he said he couldn't believe it. So he says we had to put them on the main stage this year.
and that's
He
the
said it
stage,
was just
Paddy. Sorry, Paddy, that's the stage that Kneecap played on this year, and they will be
okay.
the main stage next year, I would imagine.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, it's
and the,
I mean, they're not. I mean, people have to understand. There's songs about Irish history. They're not. They're not. Um, they're not sectarian songs by any means. They're not. They're songs about our history, about what's happened. You know, come back hundreds of years, right up to the present day, and the continuation and the same struggle, and they're singing about it. You know, okay, they made money, but that was their job. I mean, I honestly would prefer that somebody sang them than nobody. I remember a guy who owned a record shop in Letterkenny in the early 80s, and I went in to get the latest LP. And he's an older guy and musician himself, and he said, nobody wants to listen to that rubbish anymore. Then translated was he didn't want to listen to it. He didn't want anybody, and Conor Cruise O'Brien, they wanted to ban them. They didn't want, if you'd listened to Conor Cruise O'Brien, then he'd nearly told you we got independence by throwing roses, at the British soldiers. You know, they wanted to distort history, change the history books. But the Wolfe Tones were singing the song, and the young people, this was the best. The young people were, and up in Sligo last week, there was 3 or 4 young people beside me, some Donegal, some Sligo. And sure, we overheard them, and sure, they were singing away the songs and they knew all the words. These young kids, about 12-year-old, and it's watching the Wolfe Tones and whatnot that the kids, And the good thing about it, things have moved on. There's nobody been killed. We can sing these songs now without hopefully anybody been annoyed about it, But especially down here, there's people. I mean, I know when I've mentioned to some of the boys at the golf, like I was going to the Wolfe Tones, I could see the expression on their faces more or less. That's the last place on earth I'd be going. But I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I'd love to see a total number. How many attended their concerts this year? Because it must be incredible. That's 45,000 last weekend.
oh yeah,
10,000 in Belfast in the SSE last week.
mm,
10,000 in the Falls Park in August. It's incredible.
yeah.
Incredible.
And now,
5,000 a year in Galway, 5,000 in Letterkenny. It's incredible.
like, do they hand the baton over now to Kneecap?
Well, you can see they're all. I mean, the guys, the Furies are gone more or less. The Chieftains are John Sheehan, the only one left. The guys, Tommy Macon, Liam Clancy gone. They're, time caught up with them. You see a lot of young groups. I've seen a group. Somebody told me about them. Oh, and they seem to get Rayon or something. No, can't remember the name, but I see them playing all over the place. There's definitely going to be an opening for, there's going no Wolfe Tones, no Furies, no Chieftains. There's definitely an opening for groups, Christy Moore, I hope he lives long. But it's probably the years are coming up as well. Like, and Christy
Yeah,
Moore,
I think in the
to
pro,
me, the greatest singer we ever had.
like I think Damien Dempsey came through, and now the Mary Wallopers from Dundalk, they've seemed to gone to another level as well. They actually played the main
Yeah,
stage at Electric Picnic.
yeah. There's
But there'll
there's
always be music, what genre it is different. I think the
it,
Pogues, like I think when the Pogues came along, they changed Cayley music forever.
oh, sure, of course. I mean, Shane McGowan,
A legend.
it was incredible. And but yeah, it was funny. I think it was after the Falls Park last year, um, and oh no, it was after the Irish girls and the row at Hampden when they sang the Celtic Symphony, and that's when Joe Duffy got Brian Warfield on as a Brian, yeah, and did a big row on RT. And I did think to myself, I thought, boys, you're probably going to have to give that song a miss at least. Don't give them ammunition. It's incredible. They sang it twice the last night, at the start and the finish. Everywhere they went, it was a main song.
Yeah.
And the kids
Incredible.
everywhere. And you hear it obviously at Parkhead.
And Paddy,
And I mean,
you wrote a brilliant article about that song after the girls sang it. You wrote a great article about that in the fanzine.
oh, I mean,
I must actually dig it out and get it onto the website. Um, but so yeah,
no, it was terrible. I mean, the reporter, the English Brand David Norton or something, Sky, he says, "Do you think it's a case that the Irish need to be educated?" I mean,
you certainly don't
what?
need a history lesson from the Brits.
Yeah, Jesus, what an insulting. And and I know a couple of the girl, we Amber Barrett. I know her daddy's a guard up there, lives in Milford. When I lived there, about 10 mile away. And Ciara Grant has 100 caps for Ireland. She was playing, ironically, for Rangers. She's a doctor in Glasgow now, but she was from Kilmacrennan as well. She had 100 caps. She's probably finished coming to the end. I don't know where she's still in the panel. But she's with Hearts now, I think. But she was with Rangers for a season. And, so the girls, and sure, Jesus, they were enjoying themselves. And to get that criticism, and even there was people like an RT criticized them, the panel in RT, and I even seen I was very surprised Neil Lennon said they shouldn't have sang it, and I thought to myself, Jesus, Neil, of all people, you should understand.
I never knew that he said that.
Yeah, Neil said, I mean, and it's not like I mean, I met Neil here after Seville. They had a golf classic and in Galway, and the end of the function, and Paul Lambert was there, and Rob Douglas, and a few others. And I was chatting to Neil at one stage, and he said, "I said you're getting a bit of abuse over there." It was time he was getting all this, and he says it runs off. He says, "If you cut me open, I bleed green." I know some people don't like to hear him, but I mean, what Neil Lennon went through over the years, been a Celt, I mean, everything, been attacked on the pitch, off the pitch, with the Northern Ireland fans, and but I was surprised that he did have a wee go at the girls. Was maybe he's getting paid by Sky or Premier or whoever it is. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe.
But anyway,
Paddy, your books, you have, your first book was a great read. We had you on the podcast about that, from Arm Struggle to Academia, but you're working on another two books.
yeah, I've been working with the university all year. The When we were in the cages, some guys made harps. People did paint and different. I wasn't much good at the woodwork, but I was always writing even then, and I learned to type on an old back typewriter. And we had a cage newspaper, a tradition going down 100 years. A friend of mine from Derry, Gino McCormick, brought out a book, something on the same lines, but he studied the papers that were done in the jails going back to famine times, and there would be different papers and smuggled out and whatnot. So we we would do these, and I learned to tape, and I'd be taping up, writing bits, editing bits, getting guys to write, and the and I learned to tape. So I did all the taping, and we'd only have three in each cage. Like would have three huts, so we'd tape them, and then one paper went to each. So it'd be about 12 pages in each paper. Bring them out every month, and I have a so the three in each hut. So the hut I was in, I was able to keep that one, and the others probably got lost. And but before the burning and after the burning, I brought them out and smuggled them out. Give them. My dad, God rest him, he smuggled them out in his shoes, and had them in a box for the last 50 years. But I'd been talking to one of the academics, and he was very interested, and we didn't know what to do with them, and we decided anyway that we would donate them to the university. It was my alma mater, and so we've been talking to the university all year. So they're after completing, they've digitized everything, and there's 15 papers, and then there's a play we did as Gaeilge, and then there's Irish language notes, and they have digitized everything, and then there's 100 photos. So we're in the process now of putting it into book form, and have about 25,000 words as opposed to explain, introduce the thing. And so we're hoping to get it out. I was hoping to have it there for last Saturday night, but time went against us. But hopefully we might have it out. We're having the launch in the university in November. And then they're putting...
Keep us updated on that, Paddy.
Huh?
Keep us updated on that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Look
So
forward
we're going to have it in the library, and they have these glass cases, and they're going to put them on display, and then they're going to keep them, and they have a special collections room where postgrads and undergrads, if they're studying a particular subject, they can go in and ask to see these papers. So they have papers from going back 100 years, like Mary Robinson's after donating her papers. The papers from people from all walks of life. And who? Yeah, but anyway, they have, so we're donating them to the college, and now they wouldn't cover the publishing. The Felons Club in Belfast donated £1,000 for me towards the project. So it'll go towards the try and keep the costs down, but it should be interesting. We'll get them out around. Maybe not as many at them in 100 shops from Donegal to Kerry like the last one, but we'll get them into different places that we think there might be a demand, and it should be interesting. A lot of articles, a lot of the guys are dead. But a lot of we get different people wrote different articles, but mostly political, about struggles, Vietnam and Cuba and Algeria and Ireland. But then there'll be a bit of sport, there'll be a bit of fun page, just interesting. As well as like obviously Republicans always have an education program themselves. I've always done that. Where the loyalists were pumping iron and taking drugs, and Republicans always get into education. And but then at times they would have the jail themselves. They would have their education program that have teachers coming in from the outside. But every so often there'd be a riot, and then that would be the end of that for 6 months. But anyway, there was a girl teacher, an English teacher, who used to come in, who besides been quite a looker as well. She was very popular, and I'd written an article one time about the power of advertising, and she came in one day and she says, I took the copy of your paper, and I brought it around the 22 cages that I teach in, to loyalists, to the officials, to NLA, and I read your article as part of my English class. To everybody, and she said I got some made. She says to me, when you get out of here, you write this down. She says, and 30 or 40 years, every arsehole, every academic, every people that knew nothing about it will be writing books about it. So suppose 40 years later I got round to writing the books, and
Yeah. And then you've
they're
another
there, they're there.
pipeline as well, haven't you? You've another one in the pipeline.
Well, this one actually is more close to home. I know I haven't talked much about it since the first bit of it, Ross. But I started a book on Celtic before COVID, but then when the other books came on, it's just been on. It's been on the laptop about half of it, so I've more or less finished it. I suppose it's about my experience with Celtic for 55 years. It's about the Donegal diaspora and the Irish diaspora in general going to Glasgow. And so that's more or less finished. It's with well, I have my publisher here, but Liam, Liam who writes for you as well. Liam told me about introduced me to David Falls. I think we maybe talked about this, but he does the Celtic Star, and they publish a lot of books. So I run it by them, and I think they're going to publish it. The big thing with going with them is that they're going to get it into the Celtic shops, which would be. Now I had to be careful what I was writing because he says if you mention stuff, Celtic won't touch it. Certain stuff about the North, so we had to be careful about that. But that's an option. Or I can publish it myself here on Amazon. We have to see when he comes back because they're Matt Cord. You know him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know him, but I
Read
know
some of his books.
Yeah, so he's brought out 2 books about Celtic in the 30s, so they're focused on that at the moment, and then they're going to make a decision on mine. The big plus is they're not looking money up front, whereas the last one I got 1,000 up front, and I know we recouped it, but where they're not, and then you work at a percentage out of it, like which is fine, and they'll do it in hardback. But the plus sign is they'll get it into the Celtic shop, guarantees thousands of people in every week.
I don't
Shops
think other books are going to make the Celtic shop.
Huh?
I don't think Celtic are going to take your other books.
Well, it's no, not take the other ones. Oh no, just the Celtic one. But we'll see. If there's a problem with Celtic, I mean, I'll get it published here, and we'll see how it goes. I have a provisional title on it, but they weren't over keen. I took the words from the Rod Stewart song. You're in my heart, you're in my soul. But they suggested to me maybe Rod mightn't be the most popular amongst a lot of Celtic supporters, because of some things he said at times. So maybe it mightn't be a good idea to use that. So with that, it's only a working title. And the other title will have, Celtic, you're in my life or something, something like that. But it's about 100.
Anyway. Paddy, I look forward to reading both.
About 120,000 words. Sitting there, they're ready to go. With a lot of photos over the years. The one other thing before we're finishing up, I got word from Trinity College. Brian Hanley's the lecturer. He's from up your part, I think, up there somewhere. Drogheda, Dundalk, maybe. Brian told me that my book, Armed Struggle to Academia, has been put on the Trinity reading list for first-year undergrads this year in Trinity,
Congratulations.
So it's an interesting. I said to him, 50 years ago, Trinity would have burnt the book, but it's changed as well, So it's on the reading list in Trinity, The
Brilliant.
Course, 20th century Irish history course. It's another plus,
That's great, Paddy. Paddy, I look forward to the 2 books. I look forward to having you back on the podcast again. I look forward to reading all your articles in more than 90 minutes. And I look forward to getting a point with you during the season.
Oh yeah, we'll have to. I'm over in November. Eh?
It won't be up in Dingwall.
No. I'm over at the two home games in November. You'll
I'll hopefully
probably be
catch you
over.
then.
The we're heading for a wee bit of sun then in Lanzarote for Christmas.
Well deserved.
That but yeah, see, they'll watch the Rangers match. And do you know Lanzarote?
I've been to Lanzarote.
We stay in it's not Del Carmen, the sort of mad place, but the Matagorda. It's up towards the airport, but they have a lovely Celtic bar, the Old Triangle. Yeah. So we'll probably watch the New Year game there.
Well, as I said, Paddy, it's been a pleasure, and I'll talk to you soon.
No problem, Andy. Nice talking to you again.